it's the first time in my career where I feel like if I'm not really on top of this stuff, we could get left behind. Data and analytics and big data and AI and all that's been around for a long time. But how we leverage it to make our jobs more efficient, that's the new stuff.
How has AI impacted your role as the CMO, like as a marketing executive and a leader?
We really have to know ourselves. If you're super analytical and tech savvy, lean into all of this and become an expert. And if you're not, then lean into your humanity and your creativity, because machines only know what they knew before. They don't know about innovation and what's new. And so I try to employ that thinking in how I organize the team too. My org chart is left to right, analytics to creativity, either direction. There's a place for everybody.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Marketing Trends. This is your host for the journey, as always, Jeremy Bergeron. Today, you know what I'm going to say because I say it every week. We have another extraordinary guest. Let me tell you, I hope you're seated. If you're driving, pull over. If you're operating heavy machinery, be a little gentle, because who we have in the house today has already come on our other top show that's in the top 20 right now. Shout out CX Experience Show. We have Jill Thomas, who is the Chief Marketing and Customer Experience Officer of the PGA Tour Superstore. Now, before you go Googling her and all the things, which I know you all do, let me just break it down real quick and we're going to get right to it because I want to hear her talking way more than me. But we're talking about someone who has over 2 decades of senior leadership experience at some small iconic companies like Disney, Cinnabon, PepsiCo. I say small in jest, obviously. These are massive brands. So we're talking about someone who is a strategic marketing powerhouse. There's no doubt that Jill, I already know this without talking to her, that she excels at growth, she excels at brand performance, and she excels at innovative marketing strategies. I already know that. So Jill, welcome to the show. We're so honored that you took some time to be a part of Marketing Trends.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I'm so looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, I get really energized when I see someone such as yourself, come into our field, because I see that you've done so many things. You've been a part of so many initiatives, over 25 years in the game of marketing and marketing leadership. You studied marketing as a student. You have been on the marketing path for a while, and you sit at a really interesting organization in a really interesting retail space. So I think we can go lots of places today, but what is kind of happening for you in your world right now as you look across the sea of retail and golf retail and the brand you're leading and supporting? What's in your world right now? What's lighting you up? What are you noticing? What are you paying attention to?
Well, it's such a great way to start. It gives me a chance to talk a little bit about what we're doing at the PGA Tour Superstore and the exciting moment in time we have in golf. I remember when this role first became available and I was talking to the incumbent who I knew personally, and he said, golf retail, it's really cool and all, but it's kind of slow and it's sort of like a very one-dimensional customer and it's not really that complicated. And I was like, well, it sounds cool and I love golf. So, let me check this thing out. And Arthur Blank, who is our owner, was one of my personal heroes. So I'm like, let's figure it out. So, of course, I started in December of 2019. And about, 6 weeks later, the whole world changed and golf has absolutely exploded. And so what's so cool as a marketer about that is the entire model has shifted from this very, what I would call stereotypical golf consumer, is now no stereotypes, no rules, so many different types of consumers, different ways they're engaging with the game, where they're being inspired by the game, how they're playing, what they're wearing. It's all different. And so it's like my marketing dream come true. It's solving the Tetris puzzle, which is how are we going to reach all these new audiences in the most effective and efficient way? And how are we going to build a brand We have an amazing brand, the PGA Tour Superstore, that holds us to a really high standard. But what do we really stand for? How do we make sure people know how we're different and how we really stand out in this space? So it is, I'm no kidding. It is such an exciting time to work in golf. It's never been healthier. And I hesitate to say it, but I would argue it's cool. It's cool to work in
I love
golf,
it.
right? So it's really fun.
I love that. I mean, I'm personally a huge golf fan and player as well. And, when I can get out there, I do, and I love it. And so I'm just as a golf nerd myself, I would agree with you. I'm very biased. I love the game. And I think you're at one of the most exciting industries in retail, but you put that with golf together, like you're at the cutting edge of like what I think matters to people, certainly in the golf game. So I'm paying attention.
Awesome.
So I am curious, and we touched on this a little bit before we pressed record, and I think this is really interesting because Jill, you come from some storied brands. You come from brands like PepsiCo and Cinnabon, right? And you've worked at places like Edible Arrangements, and there's others that we mentioned, right? Now PGA Superstore. And
Yep.
so you're coming from all of these organizations that all have different levels of resources, support, strategy, appreciation for the marketing leader and marketing team. You're bringing now all of these tools in your tool belt to the PGA Superstore, which had its own marketing function before you're there. Now you're there to take it to another level. You've been there over 4 years, so it's obviously happening. But how do you kind of come in and kind of assess also, like, maybe you don't have access to the same things you had at PepsiCo or something, right? How do you navigate that scenario as a leader, kind of doing more with less, if you will, or making more things happen without the same amount of support and resources? What does that feel like? How do you navigate that? Your content is at the heart of what you do. It connects your company to others, teaches them, guides them, and inspires them. But creating, managing, and accelerating content creation is often chaotic and difficult. Empower your content teams with Brightspot Content Management System, made specifically for marketers and corporate communications leaders. No more waiting for a developer to have to piece things together. Put the power to create and deliver digital experiences into the hands of your marketers with a comprehensive suite of ready-to-use tools and functionality. Bring a bright spot to your tech stack with the Brightspot Content Management System. Visit brightspot.com/marketing trends today.
I think that is my secret talent is, and I study the discipline of marketing. I try to stay connected to other CMOs, other leaders, people I respect in the business at all levels of marketing. And I really enjoy the challenge of building not only the business is first, but the discipline of marketing within an organization. And I've had a chance to do it a couple times in my career. And this one has been, the biggest challenge because, when I started, my team was 11. I'm coming from really big brands with hundreds of marketers, and I sort of got introduced to 11 people, but the secret was that 8 of them were actually focused on e-commerce. So it was really a much smaller team of 3 that was the marketing team. And when you think about that, there's some sort of table stakes with marketing, like, in my perfect world, somebody is driving data and insights. Someone owns sort of the brand, the storytelling, the calendar, the content. Somebody is driving creative. There's owners of the different channels and the disciplines. That's when it gets a little more exponential and complicated. And, there's always, agencies involved, and how do you manage those, and who does what, and what are our ways of working? And really, it was a kind of a clean slate when I got here. Again, the customer of golf was very one-dimensional. You knew where to find them, you knew what they looked like, and you knew why they played the game. Today, it is a very many, many, many different audiences to serve and all playing the game for different reasons. So not everybody is playing for game improvement, right? Pre-COVID, the customer, the core was all about game improvement. Today, it's about mind, body, and spirit, right? I play this game that I love. Some people are playing to be connected to earth. Some people are playing to stay connected to people. And some people still are very focused on improving their game. That makes our job way more complicated, and therefore the support and the structure of our team had to dramatically change from where we were for just 4.5 years ago
Wow.
to today. And I remember, I started in December. In January, you're supposed to, as a marketing leader, you're supposed to come in and listen and do your first 90-day presentation. I couldn't wait 90 days. It was too easy. I was in there like 2 weeks later with our CEO, and I said, listen, got a great foundation here. We had a very strong e-commerce foundation, marketing side. We need to invest in data and digital is where the investment needed to be made. These are big investments. They're platform investments. This isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to be a multi-year plan. And I presented him with a 3-year plan of transformation for the digital, our business, but also for the team itself. And he kind of looked at me and said, yeah, that seems nice and okay. And we'll see where that goes. Or it might be 5 years instead of 3 or whatever. He sort of patted me on the head a little bit and said, sounds good, But fast forward, a few weeks later, we were pushed very quickly into having to make those changes. And quite frankly, that really helped my cause because the business, grew dramatically and our jobs really changed over that time. But I already had the plan. So it was really just sort of implementing the plan. And I said it would take 3 years. I am in the 4th year of that plan. And I would tell you, we're still, far away because from a resource perspective, it is bigger than people realized. And, to change out, wholly change out platforms is, a big undertaking, especially for a small business like ours. So, I think the blessing of working in the big organizations is the vision that you are able to gain and the perspective of what, perfection could look like. I mean, to try to compare ourselves either from a resource perspective or a process perspective to a company as amazing as the Walt Disney Company, that we're not going to get there. But yet it does inform my decision making, and it does help me sort of this is nice and this is important. And, how do I pace and sequence the transformation? So, it helps me a lot to have had that background, but it is truly very, very different to kind of build a high functioning, very disciplined marketing organization with significantly fewer resources. So it's a challenge. It's probably the number one challenge of my job. And it's the thing I probably spend the most time thinking about.
Wow. It's so interesting. So it's a balance of prioritizing what areas of marketing to develop first when resources are limited. So you said you assessed there was a certain team there, and maybe some open roles that got to be created or filled, plus the technology investment into maybe a platform or switching. And then, do that, by the way, with probably way less resources than you had before.
While managing a business that is doubling and tripling in size overnight.
Yes. So you really took one upon yourself, Jill. You really took a great challenge on, right? It's I can imagine, again, you're playing with some championship teams, that are doing well in their categories. And then you want to bring kind of all that process, execution, strategy. And then it's what about the resources? What about the ability to actually execute? Okay, now we got to scale that down, create a plan that actually makes sense. And then you got to say, hey, trust me for 3 years while we move fast and break things, essentially, and then get the right people in place and tech in place so we can, be a business that, continues to grow. Amazing.
That's exactly right. And the The trust me part is really, really can't be understated. And
Yeah.
because there was a moment in time that I was saying, trust me, and we weren't delivering, something that was visible to the eye. We were building something. And so you had to find a way to, I don't want to say, it's like, hey, we're doing this, and it's very tactical and it's sort of buzzworthy. It's not sustainable and long term. For that, that's happening over here. You don't see it right now, but believe me, trust me when I tell you it's happening. And it's exciting, but it's also very challenging. And I was still new in role too, so I
Yeah.
wanted to demonstrate. I wanted to put some wins on the scoreboard, um, while also gaining the credibility of our organization, our leadership, to support this idea of major investment in marketing technology, which was a wholly new idea.
Wow. So
It's been crazy.
So you're leading me to my next question, which is I wanted to ask you about quick wins, right? What were some of these early successes that, really you focused on building momentum to demonstrate that value of, hey, we need to keep going, more sophisticated marketing, let's keep going. What were some of those wins?
Anyone that knows me or has ever worked with me knows I tend to be a hot, a strategic thinker. I'm not always the greatest executor. I mean, let's be real. We're not all great at everything, right? And I try to surround myself with people who are really good at translating these ideas and bringing them to life. And that's great. But when you're in a team of three, and they don't always exactly understand, they didn't come from where you came from. So they don't, I can't give them shorthand. I have to kind of explain it to them in long form. It takes a while, to get things going. And meanwhile, COVID was upon us. We were open, like we were not a business that shut down. We were not a group of people that went and worked from home. We worked from home for maybe 30 days, and then we were back in the office, and we were expected, there was all this intensity around, wow, there's all this demand. How do we serve the demand? How do we shift and change what we're doing to meet that demand? So I had to really ask, I probably, in that short period of time, and in March of 2020, I probably watched, 20 podcasts just like this one of
Wow.
other people that were like going through what we were all going through. And I really had to listen, like who's got this thing figured out? And I wish I could credit the person that I heard this from, but someone just said, I have to stop thinking about the 2 years from now. Cause that's the plight of the marketer. We have to think about what happened, what's happening now, what's going to happen 2 years from now. And she said, I just had to like let that go and go, I got to focus on the right now. And when she said that, it sort of liberated me to go, hey, I remember what it was like to be the marketing manager and to have to like deliver tactically every single day and have those creative ideas. So what we really just sort of shifted how we were doing work. We met every morning and we talked about what was going to happen that day. And we didn't really look too far down the path. I remember, very quickly having to come up. I came from the restaurant world. So Curbside Caddy, which was our e-commerce delivery, BOPIS delivery system, we came up with that, very quickly into COVID. I remember the day I threw that out there and the operator sort of balked at it a little bit. And I said, time out. Here's what I need you to remember. And once everybody got it, we implemented it 24 hours later. And thank goodness, because it really drove our e-commerce business at a time it was critical. So there was the product or solutions that we were creating, but then the other quick wins were coming from some of the content, because I went to our content group and I said, okay, we can't, all these great big plans that we have, professional golf is on hiatus. The world now needs to be entertained, right? So in the past, all the content we might have been producing might have been very technical or about fitting or about, game improvement. I said, what if we just threw that aside and we just made people laugh? And we said, you know what, we're all in this together. So it really kind of changed our creative strategy. And we put out some content that I think is I always say it's some of the best content nobody's ever seen. But we did a mockumentary called The Quiet Sign Guy. What was he doing while the PGA Tour was on hiatus? Where was the Quiet Sign Guy? It's probably one of the funniest things I've ever done. And it's a little bit of a long form piece that sits on YouTube today.
Nice.
But that's what we were doing. We were really just focusing on what do we need to accomplish right now? What's the consumer feeling, thinking, experiencing? And how can we show up for them in a way? We're not trying to sell them a golf club or you need these golf balls. It didn't matter in that moment. So those, I think, were the wins. We established our social presence really fast. And it's probably the thing I'm most proud of as we sit here today. So those were the some of the bigger quick wins that we did, and I've sort of been riffing off of those ever since. It definitely informed our creative strategy even today. If you see our TV spots are generally pretty, smart smile, a little bit funny. They tend to be on the Sports Center kind of side of things.
Okay, cool.
Because we try to see ourselves as fans serving fans. We are not trying to say, I am not a sub 10 handicap golfer, so I'm not, but I am an authority on golf and golf equipment and apparel. So we're just trying to be your friend in golf. And that's really, that was the quick win. It forced I didn't have time to, draw out, let's have a 5-month discussion about our brand positioning. We didn't have time. We had to sit in a room that day and go, who are we? What are we about? How are we going to serve the customer today? And it kind of taught me a little bit of a lesson about, perfection versus like, what do we need to get the job done? And that was a big help for me personally. And that's how we coped. That was our coping mechanism. We tried to make people laugh.
That's awesome. I love that play. And that was an important one. I love that you're hanging your hat on that, which is much better. It's just fun. It's better content to consume, when brands are doing that. And so I appreciate that. In terms of content, I love that. What content distribution channels have been the most effective for the PGA Tour Superstore?
Again, pre-COVID, if for a brand our size and a budget that's relatively small compared to like the other brands you were mentioning, the first question I'm always going to have is TV worth it, right? Because it costs a lot to create the content for television. And if we don't have the resources to leverage it across, in a broad way, like maybe we need to be more one-to-one focused or, audience led. And that was the biggest expense of this team, was a major buy in golf. And so at first I sort of said, we need to walk away from that. But what I realized very quickly is that is in the case of golf, it's targeted. TV is actually a targeted medium because you buy the golf channel and you are speaking directly to the core golfer. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up sort of keeping that, and it's remained in our portfolio, our media portfolio. But we haven't substantively grown it. We've just sort of maintained it. But now we've layered on many more channels. And that's really what we've done. Social has been a huge channel for us. As you know, golf is going through a lot right now. And in the past, a professional golfer might influence a purchase that you might make. You see someone wearing a pair of shoes or playing a club, and it's the one sport where you can go buy those same things and play them yourselves. Well, today, influencers have much more influence on the purchase decision with this wider audience than professional golfers. So professional golf is in a bit of turmoil. Viewership has been a little challenging. So we've really more leaned into social and those channels, and working very closely with some very specific, fabulous influencers in golf. And I think it's really where we've seen the most growth. And then, of course, we've added new channels. SMS, we didn't do any texting before. Ooh. We've added that channel. So it's small, but mighty. And we're building a lot of new platforms of new channels. So
That's
Now we
awesome.
have, by the way, we did no performance marketing, or we did very little. We did some paid search. Now it is like a huge portion of what we do.
Okay.
So all of
Wow.
those things have transpired in the last 3 years and really changed like how we allocate resources and where our message shows up.
Leaning into social, has user generated content been a part of the strategy? If so, how do you kind of encourage it and leverage it?
So in our case, user generated content is coming from our what we call our pros, which is our associates. So we have 2,500 golf fanatics out in the world that work in our
Okay.
stores and wear a navy blue shirt. And we say shop with the pros. We mean, the double entendre between the PGA Tour and our pros, at which we
Okay.
take a huge amount of pride and big investment in training of all the latest equipment trends, the best way to fit someone, apparel, all those things. We take over 400 associates to a golf course, and we did it at PGA National this year. Next year, we're changing our venue. I won't say somewhere really iconic and cool. And we bring them in for a week and we teach them. We have every major manufacturer come out and teach them everything they need to know. And so those are our pros. And so they actually generate really great content. And a lot of them, just they're fans of golf. They see a lot of influencers. They try to replicate some of that content. They come up with their own brand. And we
Mm.
use that content. So we haven't really leaned into actual customer driven content or that kind of user generated content, but we have organically sourced content from our own pros, whether it's
Mm.
fitting tips or how to select a wedge or whatever. It's more organic, but it's coming from our people, and that means a lot to us.
Are there any challenges that you're facing, the team is facing in content creation? Like, are there big stuff that comes up around that, and how do you, if so, how do you and them overcome it?
Well, our challenge is probably the same as everyone's. We don't have enough money or resources to get as much as we want. I mean, I know user generated would be one way to crowdsource a lot more content. Again, we tend to lean into influencers for that crowdsourcing and our own associates to do it. But that is the challenge. And I think the other challenge for us in particular is we're sort of really committed to the production. So like what we tell, anytime I always say, if you give us a gift, we'll do good things with the gift. And so if one of our vendor partners, say, for example, if you see our TV spot we're running right now on the Golf Channel features Jordan Spieth in it. And that came to us as a partner in partnership with Under Armour, which is his major sponsor. We could not have afforded to get Jordan Spieth into a TV spot without the partnership of our
Mm.
vendors. But I always tell them, if you gift us something amazing like that, we will do it right. We will invest in the production and we will make it amazing. And that's what we've been true to. Of course, that costs a lot more money than shooting things on our iPhones. So, I
Sure.
just don't have enough money to create all the great content that our team has got so many ideas, and I wish we had time and the resources to get it all.
And is there anything around the use of augmented reality or VR to create kind of immersive shopping experiences? I'm hearing more about like virtual try-ons and kind of AR overlays and club fittings, things like that.
For absolutely, for sure, yes. And for things like that, of course, we work with outside partners. We do have an innovation sort of team, I would say
Oh,
working
cool.
group, for lack of a better term. And we are definitely, there's some things in our pipeline that I'm very excited about. And a lot of it came from our website redesign. So this year, a few months ago, we relaunched our website. So we went from what I would say, was a fine, sort of retail website to really best in class, well-built, modern platform that will allow us to deliver much more sophisticated experiences to the customer and digitally, and using tools like you just mentioned. So that's very much to come. So that's sort of the big work that we're doing. At the tactical level, what I've challenged every single team here. So we're now about 30 people. So again, not a
Okay.
huge marketing team. but 30 people nonetheless, and very distinct teams. We have a brand team and a data and analytics team, and we have I call them the disciplines. That's a Disney hangover to all my Disney friends out there, but there's our channels, right? So somebody that owns social, somebody that owns CRM, et cetera. And every single one of them has a task every month to implement AI somewhere in their ways of working to make us more efficient, whether that's content creation, whether it's copywriting, just everyone has, I call it the book report. Everybody, I send them anything I listen to, anything I hear. If I hear a good idea, I pass it off and I say, you go study this, you go figure it out. Tell me if it's a good idea. Do we need to invest? Is it free? That is probably, the most interesting thing happening from a marketing perspective is, of course, data and analytics and big data and AI and all that's been around for a long time. But how we leverage it to make our jobs more efficient, that's the new stuff. And so I guess to answer your question long way around is we're looking at it in big ways and we're looking at it in our everyday, how we get work done. So it's a challenge, to be sure.
How has AI impacted your role as the CMO? Like, are you interacting with AI? If so, how are you, like, as a marketing executive and a leader, how are you using it in your kind of day-to-day, if at all?
So it's really, I do use it a lot. I mean, I tend to be an early adopter of technology anyways. And I do try to stay on top of what's happening in marketing, even though, our team is small and our challenge to solve is very different than, say, a Walt Disney Company's challenge to solve. I still try to make sure I understand what are people talking about. Even if it's a little advanced topics for where we're at, I want to be on top of it. And I had the opportunity to go to New York City not too long ago with the ANA, and it was the Global CMO Summit, and some of the greatest brands in the world were there. And it was just really interesting to hear that everybody is trying to figure this out at some level. Some are so sophisticated. That creates anxiety for me because I'm like, okay, where you are and where we are there's a huge gap. Do I try to leapfrog or do I incrementally try to catch up? Or like how it's the first time in my career where I feel like if I'm not really on top of this stuff, we could get left behind. Our competitors are actually very, very big companies. I won't name names, but our main competitor is a $12 billion, very savvy sporting goods company. And we're a tiny little, golf retail business. So if they are leveraging these amazing new tools to make their content stronger, to build audiences, to deliver better digital experiences, that scares me, because I've always said we may not be able to outspend people, but we can outsmart them. And right now, if they're using AI tools, they might be able to outsmart us. And I don't like that. So, I saw a TED Talk that I thought was really interesting where they were saying, the person speaking was saying, in this age of AI, we really have to know ourselves. If you're super analytical and tech savvy, lean into all of this and become an expert. And if you're not, then lean into your humanity and your creativity, because machines only know what they knew before. They don't know about innovation and what's new. So I try to employ that thinking in how I organize the team too. My org chart is left to right, analytics to creativity, strategy to implementation. And I really am trying to help people lean into sharpening their saw, whatever level of comfort they have with either direction. There's a place for everybody.
I'm also curious about, just generally speaking, what you've seen in kind of consumer behavior changes. As someone who kind of oversees the e-commerce business and the P&L at PGA Superstore, what have you really noticed in terms of consumer behavior as it relates to shopping online, certainly, or even retail?
Yeah, I mean, what is happening from a behavior standpoint, and also from a competitive standpoint, is our competitive set has broadened to the universe, right? So over the last 3 years, a lot of great apparel brands, for example, have recognized this golf trend. So we have a whole set of non-traditional competitors that are big brands with, that are savvy marketing companies that are, recognizing that paid search, that, they can get into paid search and start winning at search. Golf pant near me is a pretty broad term. And, if you do a golf term search right now on the apparel side, you won't see any golf brands. You'll see a lot of athleisure brands. So that's how the consumer has changed. Their options are way broader than they've ever been. They don't have to come to a specialty golf retailer anymore, because every retailer is either, selling apparel, or even on the equipment side. I mean, the equipment side is hard to get into. And certainly we dominate that space. But the apparel side of the business is, I think, where you're seeing the greatest shifts for us right now. And it's just non-traditional players getting into the game, taking a piece of it.
Did your team spend a lot of time on the kind of experience, the seamless experience across all these different channels, right? Omni-channel, they're interacting with this brand on their phones, online, in store, right? All kinds of different ways. How much time and what do you notice on, like, okay, is this seamless? What's this experience like for people across all these different channels?
Yes, it's definitely a priority, and it's something we're studying and we're getting better at it. So when I started, we had the great benefit of a very solid foundation of e-commerce, and we were able to add a leader, a very, very experienced leader, shortly after I started, and she and I are very like-minded about the type of experience we want to create and how, the role of e-commerce in our ecosystem. We know for sure that the greatest experience a customer can have is to come into our store. I always jokingly say I'm going to make every associate wear a button that says, "Ask me a question." Because the second someone gives us the opportunity to talk to them and to share our passion and our advice and our guidance, it's a no-brainer. We will close those sales all the time. But the world has changed and people want to do their shopping online. And what we're seeing is 6 to 8 visits to the website to do research before they ever get into the store. They're price checking, they're matching. Golf is a highly controlled pricing on the hard goods side. The manufacturers dictate the pricing. So there isn't really a lot of price chasing on the hard goods side. I think how you leverage last generation hard goods is where you get a little flexibility, and I think where you see a little pricing games happening. The manufacturers put out new product every year, and they're not going to budge on the pricing every year. But, if you want to win on price on the hard goods side, you play around with product from 4 years ago. We don't really do that because we don't think that's in the best interest of the customer. But if you're just trying to win a search, and you're trying to do it through price, that's a little bit challenging. So it's really all of it is just sort of just making what we do way more complicated, but in the best possible way as marketers, because what we love is to solve problems and grow the business and leverage all the channels and do great creative. And it's just, I think the great news is for me and for our team is that marketing is more relevant and important at the PGA Tour Superstore than it has ever been. And it's appreciated by our entire organization, our operators, our merchants, our IT team. Like, everyone understands that we're a growth driving entity. We are not a cost center. We are contributing to the growth. And now through data and analytics and that omni-channel perspective, we actually have the information to demonstrate what are we doing and how does it contribute. And there's 2 sides of that coin, I will say. And if we get to talk about that, I will share. But, the downside of that is when performance metrics, you get lean so hard into them because you want to prove that you belong, you're driving value. So you start talking about ROAS, for example. Yep. It pushes you down into the bottom of the funnel, and it prevents you from investing in those brand building activities that don't have the same kind of return. And that's the danger zone. I'm always pulling the red flag because like my media person is so talented. He knows he has these ROAS goals and he always wants to pull us down because he wants to go, see, I was able to do that. And I'm always like, hey, sometimes we just want to like make people happy. We don't have to always be selling. Like our point of difference is we want you to play your best. We are not going to sell you something you don't need. That is our core fundamental difference. We are not commissioned. Nobody's making a commission on anything at the PGA Tour Superstore. So we truly are incented to make sure you get what you need and not more than you need. So I try to remind the team of that. Like, yes, we want to drive sales, but we really want to do both. We want to build the brand and drive the sales. So that's sustainable, healthy, long-term growth, not just short-term sales.
Sometimes the building the brand initiatives and exercises, again, like, can you quantitatively say, okay, this is what's happening? Because that's been such an age-old thing in marketing, right? And those are necessary. And then you, as the marketing leader, have to, balancing act of communicating why we're doing it. Trust me, I got this. Plus the team is looking to you and the ELT is looking to you, and the customers are looking to you. And so again, navigating that is just like, it's an art and a science that only a true CMO can do. And so I clearly know you've been balancing it well, Jill. As we wrap up here, are there any final thoughts or insights that you'd like to share with our listeners about marketing, leadership, or anything else in between?
Well, first of all, I hope you all are getting out there and playing golf because if now is the time, right?
That's right.
It is a new game. It is not your dad's Buick, as they say in the advertising business, right? This is women. It's people of color. It's bold. It's loud. It's music. It's white belts and hoodies and joggers and anything goes. And I hope that everyone is really discovering this incredible game called golf. So that's my first most important message. And my second, I guess, is just to say this: none of us have all the answers and nothing is exactly the way we want it to be. And if you are a CMO or a marketing leader or anyone works in marketing and you have it all figured out, please link in with me and help me get there, because it's been a journey of 25 years for me. I'll never reach the end goal. It excites me every single day. And I can't imagine a more interesting time to work in this cool business we call marketing than right now, for all the reasons we just talked about: the complexity, the digital transformation, the technology, the art and the science of it all. And that's what I think is beautiful about marketing, that there's a place at the table for anybody in marketing, whether you're an analytical thinker or you're a wild creative who's totally out there. There's something for you to do in marketing, and we need all that diversity of thought to be our best selves. And I'm having the time of my life. They're going to have to drag me out of here.
Well said. And Jill, how can our listeners stay connected with you and keep up with the latest news from what you're up to and then PGA Tour Superstore?
Well, definitely link in with me. I try to link in with everyone. If you're selling me something, here's my advice to you. Just send me an email. I think my email address is pretty easy to get it, but don't try to pretend we've met before or that you know. Just send me a straight up email and say, here's the product I've got. Here's why I think it matters to you. And don't send me a meeting invite. I don't know who's doing that. Why are y'all doing that? Don't do that.
That strategy. That's something we could talk about.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah. That's a different one. How you navigate that one, because it's a strategy that's a very interesting one. That
I think it's funny, but I am the biggest consumer of white papers and playbooks in America. Cool. Like, I am on LinkedIn constantly learning and getting inspired by all the great work that my peers do and all the great brands that are out there, and listening to podcasts like yours. I listened to about 4 or 5 of them in the last couple of weeks that were really interesting. We can talk about another time, but just keep doing what you're doing, and I'll keep following. And I'm happy to be of assistance or a listening ear, or if you have advice for me, I'm humble and I will take it all. So LinkedIn's probably the best path.
I love it. Well, you're probably picking up, audience to what I've been picking up on, which is, why someone like Jill is where she is right? Humble, behind the scenes, and very much like doing marketing in big ways and contributing in big ways. So thank you for allowing us to really kind of toot your horn today and celebrate you, Jill. This has been epic. It's inspiration and just informative things that you shared here that's going to go a long way. So thank you so much. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with your network as always, and stay tuned for more exciting conversations with epic industry leaders like Jill. Thanks a lot. And Jill, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Brightspot Content Management System enables marketers to launch in just 100 days. It efficiently manages marketing campaigns or updates investors on your corporate site, handling it all seamlessly. With over 100 plus different content types and templates, marketers can deliver a customized, relevant experience to your audience. Additionally, integrate your current marketing automations platform and access instant analytics and SEO recommendations directly from your Brightspot content management system, simplifying tool management. Discover more at brightspot.com/marketing trends.